US stocks are the priciest ever relative to China. For good reason, is that? Which are you tempted by at the moment, US stocks or Chinese?
Well, we're probably more tempted by the US at the moment just because it's improving, whereas in China you see rates of growth generally slowing down, although they're still quite high. In the US, you've got a market that's 25% technology that can grow at 20–30% a year. So, of course, that's going to trade on higher valuation multiples than, a market. China does have a lot of tech, but it's also got a lot of banks with a lot of non-performing loans and a lot of issues to sort out there.
So do you buy US tech or buy US small caps? Because I could have chosen, I had so many charts to choose from in this conversation, Shanti. I could have chosen one that showed US small caps really outperforming China.
Yeah, so I think part of US small caps have done really well this year, and that's been they're insulated from the trade war. Since we've seen the dollar reverse and get stronger in the last month, they've been quite good. I think it's hard to pick between the two necessarily. Ironically, US tech is probably a little bit cheaper on valuation grounds than small caps because they are quite high.
And in terms of US tech, the changes in taxation rules this week were quite interesting, with a court ruling that there could be tax on internet retailers. Some of them sold off as a result, but not by a great deal. And I've read lots of opinion pieces that suggested this is because they don't actually compete on price anymore. They compete on convenience.
Yeah, and I think that's, a big reason for it. They probably know that eventually this was going to come, and it's probably something that's been priced in to some degree. Seems only fair to some extent. But I think the reasons we're shifting to online shopping and online services is, it's like you said, it's more about convenience, ease of doing business, than it is necessarily the price points that we can get. But oftentimes it is cheaper as well.
Shanti, a very good morning to you. There's one of my favourite stories of the week is about what happens with recessions. They don't die of old age. We had a cracking interview with David Rosenberg, the chief economist at Gluskin Sheff Associates, and he said, no, it dies because the Fed put a bullet in its head. Would you agree with that? Are we 12 months away from a recession in the United States of America, or is that a little bit over-dramatic by Mr. Rosenberg?
We don't see any signs of a recession, so we've got strong manufacturing data. We've got PMIs coming out later today. They might be a little weaker, but they're still well north of 50. We've got low unemployment. We've got a growing economy. We've still got pretty low inflation. I think the only thing that worries us at Coutts a little bit is the yield curve flattening, but we're still a fair bit of ways from going negative. So we don't really see a recession coming in the next 6 to 12 months. But, we'll look at the data again tomorrow, as we do every day.
Yeah, every day, revisit that data. So you like the United States versus China. Your thoughts on China at the moment? The Shanghai Composite actually down around 19% now off January highs, so threatening to get into a bear market. I've got a chart here that just puts it in the context of 2015, where we saw action by authorities in China to try and prop up the stock market. How much is this a quote-unquote normal market, whatever that means anymore? I mean, does this type of activity, supporting the market, stopping them selling off too much, does that just put you off?
Well, I think with China, you have to be aware of the regulatory risks, and to some extent around the world, all governments intervene with policies to support different indices. China, it just happens to a much greater extent. But I think China has also shown itself and its regulators very competent over the past 5–6 years in how they've managed some of the issues they've had with bubbles, with getting liquidity into the market. Don't necessarily know what they'll do next, but I think they've shown themselves capable of dealing with those issues.
Yeah. Shanti, thank you very much for joining us. Shanti Kelemen, Senior Portfolio Manager at Coutts.